3 times. Welcome to the February 22nd meeting of the Little Rock Planning Commission. Welcome you all here. Glad you're in the dry. I don't anticipate any tornado sirens going off. So, with that, I think we will get started with roll call. And by the way, if you do have a card you want to give me to speak, you need to do so now because we're getting ready to read the consent agenda. And those are items on the zoning that are not controversial and no opposition has been expressed. So having said that, Donna, are you ready?
Roll call.
Yes.
Chairman Berry.
Here.
Vice Chair Latour. Commissioner Bynum.
Here.
Commissioner Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Finney. Here. Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Haynes.
Here.
Commissioner Leahy. Here. Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Stebbins.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas. You have 10 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the January 11th meeting?
First off, let me note that I am here, and I forgot to say here. And having said that, I move for the approval of the consent agenda of the minutes.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. They've been seconded for January 11th. Those approved, raise your hand. Those opposed, minutes have been approved. Okay, we're going to move to the presentation of the consent agenda. Donna?
Little Rock Planning Commission Subdivision Consent Agenda, February 22nd, 2018. Items for consent withdrawal. Item D, file number Z-6783-A, 15723 Canis Road, long form PCD, located at 15723 Canis Road. The applicant has not responded to comments raised at the November 1st, 2017 Subdivision Committee meeting. Based on the number of previous deferrals for lack of response to the Subdivision Committee comments, staff recommends withdrawal of this item without prejudice. Items for consent deferral. Item A, file number S-1805, Little Rock Tours Subdivision Site Plan Review, located at 3100 Interstate 30. The applicant submitted a request dated February 6, 2018, requesting deferral of this item to the April 5th, 2018 public hearing. Staff is supportive of the deferral request. Item number B, file number Z-9284, Sticks Bar and Grill, short form PCD, located at 3910 Asher Avenue. The applicant has not provided staff with the requested parking layout and circulation plan. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the April 5th, 2018 public hearing. Item number 3, file number S-1806, Jose Bartolomos preliminary final plat, located at 14502 Alexander Road. Staff and the applicant have not been able to resolve staff's concerns regarding the placement of the driveway to serve the existing lot and the new lot. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the April 5th, 2018 public hearing to allow additional time to resolve this issue. Items for consent approval. Item C, file number Z-9285, Brown, short form PDC, located at 9203 Hilero Springs Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends the future uses of the property match the parking available on the site. Item number E, file number Z-6900-B, House of Bethesda, short form PDC, located at 6900 Pecan Avenue. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends the hours of dumpster service be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Staff recommends if the space proposed for the event center and or community center exceeds the typical parking requirement per the zoning ordinance for the use, the applicant provide additional parking. All new parking is to be landscapes per the landscape ordinance requirements. Item number F, file number Z-6051-L, Shops at Chenal, long form PCD, located on the southeast corner of Arkansas Systems Drive and Chenal Parkway. Staff has reviewed the applicant's traffic study and based on a letter received from the owner's representative, Frank Riggins of Craft & Toll and Associates, staff is now supportive of the request. The letter outlines 12 responses to an email dated February 16, 2018 from Traffic Engineering. The applicant's letter is dated February 21, 2018 and will become a part of the applicant's application and approval. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the applicant's request to grade the site with the development of the first building. Item number 1, file number S-1221-H, Chenal Valley Phase 18K, revised preliminary plat, located north of Shalamont Drive, west of Bortone Court, and east of Joe T. Robinson School. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from the land alteration ordinance to allow grading of all phases with the development of the first phase. Staff recommends approval of the variance request to allow a reduced front building line of 20 feet and a reduced side yard setback of 7 feet. Item number 4, file number S-1807, Phelps Industries Subdivision Site Plan Review, located at 1200 Fairpoint Avenue. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Item number 5, file number Z-4336-RR, Arkansas Children's Hospital Zoning Site Plan Review, located at 1 Children's Way. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from the provisions of Article 10 of Chapter 36 of the Little Rock Code of Ordinance to allow the signage as proposed. Item number 9, file number Z-7200-E, Plantation Services, short form PDC, located at 18305 Lawson Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends signage, the days and hours of operation, the dumpster placement and service be limited to as indicated in paragraph I of the agenda staff report. And item number 10, file number Z-4343-LL, rezoning from MF18 to R2 single family, lots 12 and 13, tract I3, the Ranch Subdivision, located on the southeast corner of Saratoga Drive and Ranch Boulevard. Staff recommends approval of the requested R2 single family rezoning. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Donna. Before we have a motion for consent agenda, if any of you commissioners have a reason to recuse yourself on one particular item, now's a good time to say so you can excuse yourself from voting on the consent agenda. Everyone copacetic? Okay, why don't we have a motion for the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including all staff comments and conditions therein.
We just heard a motion for the consent agenda. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner May. We have a motion that's been seconded for the consent agenda. Those approve, raise your hand. Those who do not? Okay. The consent agenda has been read. If you saw or heard item on the consent agenda that was yours, you are welcome to leave right now. And then we have 4 regular items on items 2, 6, 7, and 8. So we're going to take just a brief minute for transition to the regular agenda. Don't forget your umbrellas. You need to stay.
Ron, you have to stay. Yours,
Have a card.
you have your item.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Why don't we proceed to the regular agenda? Donna?
Okay, item number 2, file number S-1765-B, Heritage Place revised preliminary plat, located on the southeast corner of Arkansas State Highway 300 and East Pinnacle Road. On February 25, 2016, the commission approved a preliminary plat to allow the creation of a 3-lot plat. Lot 1 was proposed containing 1.5 acres, and lots 2 and 3 were proposed with just over 5 acres each. An existing home was located on Lot 1. The remaining lots were undeveloped, and new homes were proposed. The proposed lots were to be served by Mill Water Corporation. Each home was to have individual septic systems to serve wastewater treatment. Lot 3 was proposed as a lot without public street frontage, and access and utility easement across Lot 2 to provide access and utilities to the lot was approved. The current request is to allow the creation of 3 additional lots in one tract from the site. Lots 1 through 3 were final platted in April 2017. The developer is proposing to replat the 3 previously final platted lots and add 3 additional lots to the plat area. The new lots are located to the north of the previously final platted lots and are indicated as lots 4, 5, and 6. Also included is Tract A, which has an existing barn and pond. Tract A will be held in common ownership by the Property Owners Association and will be maintained by each of the lot owners via shared agreement. The southern 3 lots have approved septic systems. The northern 3 lots have acceptable perk tests performed. The applicant will be required to provide approval from the septic systems prior to the issuance of a 911 address. The plat continues to include the previously approved variance from Section 31-231 to allow the creation of the lot without public street frontage. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request. The applicant is requesting approval of a revision to the previously approved preliminary plat to increase the land area and include 3 additional lots to the proposed subdivision. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from Section 31-231 to allow the creation of a lot without public street frontage.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? We have 2 cards that wish to speak in opposition. Did you want to speak now or wait to hear from the...
I think they've just got a few questions. Why don't I wait?
Okay, that'd be good. All right. Janet Stenard?
Yes. I have several concerns.
Come up to the mic so we can pick you up.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I have several concerns. I've lived in this area since 1978, and I'm in the adjoining property. Over the years, the water supply has become more and more difficult, especially in the last year. In October of 2017, I sent them a letter about this. I followed up with 2 letters, including a certified mail. Received no response. I have major problems with my water pressure. At peak times, it can be hard to flush a toilet or to have a shower. I have also had my sprinkler system blown because of the abrupt changes in pressure. Last summer, I had to water most of the stuff by hand after it went again. So I have concerns about adding yet more properties to the water line before they've fixed the problems that they already have. I'm on top of the ridge. Other people on top of the ridge, talking to my neighbors recently, other people, and before we knew about this development, other people have also explained that they've had some problems with this. In the summer of 2012, the night of July the 4th, Mary and John Dornhofer's property burned to the ground because they couldn't get water up there, and the water company refuses to do anything about this. We have no way out if there is a fire. The road was totally blocked because they had to truck water up because of the Momair Water Corporation will not put anything on the hill. And I'm really concerned about it. That's my major concern. My second concern is that there are going to be more entrances on Highway 300. I appreciate the fact that they've made reasonably large lots in keeping with the neighborhood properties, but the access that they made last time, about which I spoke at the previous hearing for that, is on a steep bend. It is a blind, you cannot see it when you're coming from the south until you're almost on top of it, and it's prone for accidents. I don't know for a fact that accidents have happened, but I've seen a couple of near misses there when cars coming out they come very quickly down the Highway 300, and it is a risk for accidents, and to add more entrances there is going to increase the traffic flow. I'm not, obviously we need, people need entrances to the houses, but I would request that we put some sort of a hazard sign up for hidden entrances so that we don't get any more accidents down there. I don't know for a fact that accidents have happened, but I live on the hill above that road and I hear accidents, I hear ambulances going by all the time. So that's my second concern. Another concern is the adequate flood provisions for the septic system. That corner, I guess it's the northeast corner of that, no, northwest corner of the lot, the southeast corner of the intersection of Highway 300 and East Pinnacle. That tends to flood. It's majorly flooded this afternoon as I drove past it to come here. And I would want to make sure that there are adequate provisions for this so that septic systems don't get flooded and again present a health hazard. My last concern is not specifically mine, but I did send a notice about this to our neighborhood group on the East Pinnacle access, and concern has been expressed about the widening of the East Pinnacle at that point, changing the nature, the character of the property due to the widening of the road, and concern as to whether people on that north side are going to be losing their property. I say that's not my individual concern, but I'm speaking for somebody else who contacted me about concern in the neighborhood. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Have a card from Annette Conaway. Conaway. Thank you.
Conaway Anderson.
Yes.
I have one concern, and may I give you a piece of paper sort of to describe my concern with a photograph?
Sure. Just up there. Is this one copy?
Oh, I have 10 copies.
Okay. Just start up there, and then we'll pass it around.
I live on East Pinnacle Road. It's a small road, and my concern is the roads that will lead to the new lots and the new houses. Are the entrances going to be from Highway 300, or will some of them be on East Pinnacle Road? East Pinnacle Road is a small road, and I have a particular concern because my house is all the way up to the street. And if they go ahead and widen the road, I wanted to make sure that it didn't affect my property. My property is on the Roland side. You can see that on the photograph. The Roland side is on my side, and across the street where the lots are being developed, that is on the Little Rock side. And I just wanted to make sure that if the road is widened, that it's not going to be on the Roland side where I have my water supplies down the side of the road, and then also my house is all the way up to the street. Do you know exactly what the future plans, or can you find out, would be for widening the road or the entrances to the houses?
Yes, we'll speak to that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Applicant, would you like to get up?
Thank you. And I can speak to the Pinnacle Road, or I can let one of the staff speak to it, but it's on the master street plan as a collector street. We are in the county. The Pulaski County is not requiring us to widen Pinnacle. Ms. James, is that correct? Mr. Craner or Mr. Collins? And it's really coming down to the same thing as the state is telling us. They don't want the maintenance, so they're not requiring us to widen. So,
Chairman, we haven't, our policy is with the county when it's in there that we have to receive something in writing from them stating that fact. So if it's in our zoning jurisdiction, we default to the requirements of the city, you know, in that area. And so that requirement would stand until such time that the county give us that in writing, and then we will defer to the county.
And I think that's happened. So,
Okay.
let me speak to the question of water. And our Dr. Standard she's up on the hill. She's roughly 120 feet above this property. That equates in pressure to about 50 pounds. And I can see that she might have pressure problems up on the hill. David White, who now lives in the house on Lot 2, is just recently built. He's not having any problems. So on the Maumelle Water plan, there's a booster pump on, I guess it's right there next to West Ridge where you see the road, or the name of the road. And I don't know if there's some issue with that, but my client's that's not his issue. We're certainly glad to try to help. But getting water to the top of the hill is not our issue. I talk to those guys often, and I'll visit with them. We front on 300. We front on Pinnacle Road. We've got access to mains that will service this property. Driveway locations. The second neighbor, we do have 2 lots at front on Pinnacle, and they'll have driveways on Pinnacle. The remainder of the lots will take access off 300. The driveway in question about safety, it's permitted by the highway department. It's already been built, already been permitted, and so they check the site distance for us. No issue there. I'm sure people are driving fast on Highway 300. I mean, I think it's the nature of what's going on. But fortunately for us, none of the ambulances that she's hearing have been coming for us. So we're so far no problems. David, I think, has been living there with his family for about a year. Other than that, I mean, I feel like this development fits. It's 6 lots on 23 acres. These people are buying 3-acre lots and building homes that are comparable to what's in the area, and I think it fits. And so, so far it's been a nice development. There's a home on Lot 2, almost a completed home on 3. They just sold Lot 4, and I think it fits well in the area. So glad to answer any questions.
Staff, do you want to add any clarification to anything said? No? Why don't we proceed to, okay. What's that, ma'am?
May I have a clarification, please?
Yes, come on up.
If they get the permit, or if East Pinnacle is widened, since they have not finished the lots completely, I think it makes sense for the widening of the street to take place on their side, which is the Little Rock side, instead of us giving up any of our land that we really don't have on the other side. So since they haven't finished anything, it makes sense to me that they make provisions for that road that could come, the widening of the road.
Okay. Staff, would you like to speak to that, please?
The only widening that will occur is adjacent to the proposed subdivision. And typically the way streets are widened are as properties are redeveloped or as the city has a project that comes through. So at this point, there would be no widening on her side of the road, nor would there be any additional right-of-way that's required. Okay. If at some point in the future that the collector street is extended and does connect with Highway 300, then there would be either right-of-way negotiated and or purchased to allow the widening to occur on her side.
So that's what I thought the answer was, and then the state determined they wanted to, that's the state. The state does that, right?
East Pinnacle.
Yeah, on
So,
Pinnacle.
yeah, she's East
County-
Pinnacle, so that's county, that's not
The
state.
county would determine that then.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Joe?
And if I could, I'd like to say that as part of this plating, the developer's giving right-of-way on 300 and on Pinnacle. So he is giving his right-of-way, he's just not improving the road.
Gotcha. Okay.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes.
On the map here and on my map, I went to the county Donna James' office and early this week and spoke with Monty Moore. He gave me a copy.
Come
of
up
this
to the
and he-
microphone, please.
I'm sorry. I went to the property development area early this week and spoke to Monty Moore since Donna was absent. And he showed me on this map, which is shown on the map there, that there are two proposed entrances on Highway 300. And my understanding was he just said that there were not, but it's shown here on the map, and I'm a little confused.
There are additional driveway locations on Highway 300. There are 2 driveway locations proposed on Highway 300 and 2 on East Pinnacle, in addition to the existing driveway that served the previous single-family home, and then the driveway that's serving the 2 new that you keep referring to as dangerous.
No, these are not. These are the 2 new ones on East Pinnacle. That,
Could you come to the microphone, please?
Okay. I'm looking at the 2 on East Pinnacle, where Annette is concerned about the widening. The one that I'm really concerned about is further down, the one that was there initially, that they're going to add now more properties to.
So is your question about the driveways or question about the widening?
I'm concerned because my understanding of what you were saying just now is that there's going to be no access on East Pinnacle, but I'm seeing proposed entrances here on the map.
Joe, would you like to?
Sure,
come?
maybe I wasn't
here,
very
it
clear.
says-
We have 2 lots fronting on
Right.
Pinnacle. They will have driveways, and we show them on the plat.
Right.
And then 2 fronting on 300, and those driveways are shown. So the
Right.
corner lot could actually have driveways on each for a circular drive. So, and one other thing I'll throw in just since we're having fun here. Staff was concerned about our driveway locations being so close to the intersection, so we pulled those away. But at this point, we're not improving any of the roads. We're simply building driveways to town. So,
Okay.
But there are going to be 2 driveways onto East Pinnacle. That was my concern when you were addressing Annette's concerns.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, do you all have any questions? Applicant? For the applicant.
Craig,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Sorry.
this is not an issue this commission could answer anyhow, is it? About widening, since it's not proposed, or?
The standard would be the vote for the commissioner to do it per city standard. And then if we receive in writing from the county, since it's not been annexed to the city and it's in our extraterritorial, then we would default to the county at their request, because they are the ones that maintain the roadway. But the right-of-way is dedicated, for any future widening per city standard. So that is the procedure. So the commission will decide on, is this, approve it, and then that widening is a standard procedure that happens after that.
Other questions, commissioners? Okay.
Joe, you got one here that's pretty tough. You got these low water pressure above you. And I hate to approve it, but I hate not to, because if the water pressure goes down in the subdivision and these people above them don't have water, and that's health, safety, and welfare of the public. And what can we do to bring that water pressure up above there? If we don't approve this, would that cause them to get the water pressure up?
It caused my client to get his blood pressure up. Mine
stays up all the time anyway.
Well, and we can't solve the world's problems, but we can certainly say, look, I'll talk to Maumelle Water and let's see what we can do, and I'll commit to that. And I know those guys out there, and I don't know if there's a problem with the booster pump or if they need something else to happen, but it's hard to put it on these guys to fix a more global problem, if you will, to me.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you on that, but then also, I hate to approve these guys and this lady be out of water half the time.
Well, and maybe I need to talk to her direct and try to help her with a booster for her individual house, something that would help her.
Yeah. Well, booster, but at somebody's expense, can put a booster in for her individual house.
Understand.
I don't think she ought to pay for that. And well, anyway.
Well, and we're glad to try to help. So I'm going to work with her.
Good. And
thank you.
That flood study on this deal that's something else. So I'm not going to get into that unless you got something to want to talk about it.
Okay.
And the county would give you a pretty good write-up on what I've been advocating to these guys here about surveys. They nailed you, didn't they?
Okay.
You've been
Thank
pretty
you.
hard.
Thank you, Troy. Any other questions?
Joe, didn't you mention you had a client that lived next to her that was not having water pressure problems?
Yes, and they're lower. They're just lower, and they have more pressure. Yeah, and she just happens to be right at the crest of the hill. But yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Any other commissioners? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of this item, including all staff comments and conditions therein.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second? We have a motion and a second to approve this item number 2 as written with staff recommendations. Those approve this item, raise your hand. Those who do not approve, raise your hand. Item passes. There's one. Okay. One vote against, 10-4. Okay. Our next item is item number 6, Z4746.
Item number 6, file number Z-4746-E, Little Rock Funeral Home, short form POD, located at 8801 Canodal Court. The request is a rezoning the site from O3 General Office Zoning District to POD Planned Office Development Zoning District to add a crematorium as allowable use for the property. A 46.5-foot by 33.5-foot addition will be placed along the eastern side of the building to house the chamber. There are no other changes proposed for the site. The applicant indicates under normal operations there is no smoke or smell generated from the cremation process. Typically, no noticeable smoke is emitted. Perhaps under certain weather conditions, condensation will appear. The applicant states a proprietary accelerated reverse osmosis process with triple electrostatic filtration is used. Yes. The chamber is multiple combustion chamber used to retain all particulates. Exhaust gases are reburned and circulated through a series of baffles. The process is entirely automated and monitored continuously in real time over the internet by the equipment supplier. Upon approval, the equipment supplier will make a permit application to the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality for necessary air quality permits. The permit is subject to quarterly reporting and inspection. No hazardous and noxious gases will be admitted. The process is regulated by the state of Arkansas. The top of the stack will not be above the roof of the ridgeline. Only the upper 2 feet of the stack will be exposed. The rest will be included in the chimney. The top of the chimney must be above the elevation of the roof slope at a 10-foot diameter horizontal surface. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request. There will be little to no change on the exterior of the building. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Mr. Daters, we have 2 cards. Would you want to say anything now or wait till we hear the...
I think we'll go ahead and just introduce ourselves at this point.
Okay.
And then we'll sit down and listen to any comments.
All right.
Again, my name is Tim Daters, representing Brad Leggett with Little Rock Funeral Home. Brad is the owner and operator there. This is a small 1-acre office site, and we are here for the planned development so that Brad may construct a crematory. And Brad, if you can just describe what you're...
Yeah, pretty much the purpose of the reason I want to do this is about 50% of the population now chooses cremation, and families ask me all the time about where the cremation is performed, and they trust me to take care of their family and aren't really interested in me outsourcing that where I have to transport their family to another location. Anyway, I did have a meeting with some of the residents here recently. They all were fairly in favorable of it, and a bunch of them came today in support. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Julie Cothran?
Hi, I live at 605 Deerbrook, and for whatever reason, I was not aware that this issue was even taking place until, I guess it's been 2 weeks ago today, through a random phone conversation, unrelated, with a neighbor, and she said, "Are you going to the meeting at Little Rock Funeral Home tonight?" So I did rush to go over there. For whatever reason, I don't know where the breakdown in communication was, but I've lived in that house since August of 1990, and I'm active in the neighborhood association, and I've never been left out of the, and the best answer I could give on the card right now, until I hear more information, is opposed, mainly because I don't feel like I have enough information. When I attended that meeting, and maybe the funeral home didn't have all of the information available at that time, but I have concerns regarding environmental risks. I'm wondering, you know, there's Henderson Middle School is right across the street. I don't know if there are any issues there. I've tried to do as much independent research on my own, trying to figure out, you know, what is the risk of the air quality, et cetera. That's a huge concern that I have. I am not opposed to cremation. That's what's going to happen to me, so that's not the issue. I would just like to know a little bit more information on what the guidelines are from the city as to what sort of testing has to be done, and, you know, to know the environmental risks and such. That's really all I want to say. And my opposition could change. I don't know. I want to know more information if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. Meg, I don't think I can read the last name. Meg. Diane? Dunn, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I've never spoken before the board before, so I'm probably very nervous, but I'm Meg Dunn, and I'm at 8914 Mayflower Road. I was the past president of the Neighborhood Association, and I had gotten a notice of today's meeting. It's dated January 22nd. I want to know who else got this notice. Was everybody in the neighborhood supposed to get a notice of this?
Turn it around. Okay, that notice is a notice that we nailed to the contact person that we have for the neighborhood associations. And so no, only the contact person for the neighborhood association receives that notice. The applicant is required to go to an abstract company, obtain a list of all property owners, not residents, property owners, within 200 feet of the site, and mail them a certified notice of the date and time of public hearing. Those notices are to be mailed 15 days prior to the public hearing, which they did meet that requirement. And I think maybe what you may be thinking about is several years ago, 10 or so, we used to mail a postcard to all addresses within 300 feet. And, you know, but short-staffed, we had to quit that. We no longer had the staff to do that. So that may be what you're thinking about is something back in the past that we used to do to all the residents within 300 feet.
Okay, well, that was my one concern, that how many people actually knew of this meeting. Unfortunately, I had to work the night that Brad had his meeting, and I wasn't able to hear everything that was going on. I just basically want to address that I have a lot of, my thoughts are along the same lines as Julie. The environmental impact of this situation. Personally, I feel the funeral home is too close to the residential area in the first place, and I opposed it when it was even being built. Thus being said, for the environmental reasons, I object to it, and I object because of the property value if it does anything, and I would like to know more about it. And that's basically my concern, is the environmental. I mean, are they going to be doing, and I'm sure it's going to pass. I have no doubt that you are going to pass it. But is it going to, are cremations going to be taking place Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? Are they going to be done on the weekend? If there's a breach, what's going to happen? Who's going to take care? I mean, I don't know what effect, and I don't know what kind of breach that might be, but, you know, like Julie said, like the air quality, future, you know, there's a school across the street. But, again, I'm more along the lines of Julie, the concerns about the environment now, in the future, and again, is it going to be from, like, is there going to be a schedule of when they're going to do them? Are they going to do them on the weekends or whatever? So that's basically my concerns.
Thank you. So let's see if we can answer some of your questions then.
Okay.
Okay.
And I just have a question,
Yeah.
real quickly. I called in and left a message with Ms. James' voicemail that I objected. Okay, how would you relay that objection to the board? The commission, rather.
We just let them know that we received a call in opposition.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
they let us know that.
Okay,
Okay.
all righty, thank you.
Thank you. Applicant, Mr. Daters, would you like to get up and respond? And Mr. Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman Barry. The cremation equipment is purchased by a supplier. The supplier actually goes through the permitting process with the, I'm sorry, the cremation process is licensed by the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. They receive an air discharge permit. The manufacturer of the equipment is the most familiar with their equipment, so they make the application to ADQ on behalf of Little Rock Funeral Home. What's different about this equipment and the newer equipment is that the operation of the equipment is actually monitored in real time by the equipment supplier to make sure that it's performing in the way it's designed to and intended to. So in other words, during the entire process, the equipment is monitored, and if there's any abnormalities or anything like that, the manufacturer immediately notices that on the reporting that's coming into him on that. So they're able to monitor that from that location. ADQ, I believe, inspects the process, I believe, is it quarterly? Yes. Quarterly. And then, and also Brad is licensed by the state from the
Arkansas and Bombers and
and there's a separate licensing procedure that he has to go to be able to perform cremations. And if you want to address the operational timing and such.
Pretty much the operation of it, with families, most every day is just like Monday with us. I mean, there's not really a difference on weekends. You know, I would imagine most of them be during the day, probably 7 days a week, I would think. So.
The only noticeable, in addition to sometimes just simply because of the change in temperature, sometimes there is a slight mirage or shimmering as you see the heat released from the chimney. But the process itself, there are actually two chambers within the incineration equipment, and the exhaust gases from the first chamber or initial combustion are recirculated in another chamber and then reburned and recirculated to make sure that everything is combusted inside the oven, that there's no discharges of any particulate or anything like that. And again, we're licensed by ADQ and have to get that permit before we can be in operation.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, you might have some questions. Oh, Becky?
I'd just like to know where the cremations are being done now.
Most of the ones in Little Rock are being done in Greenbrier, Arkansas.
There is another.
There is a place on Bowman, and we use them sometimes, but most of them are done actually in Greenbrier. So.
There's one on the south side of Canis Road, just east of Bowman. right behind, just in that little corner right there. It's relatively
next to the skating rink.
next to the skating rink.
It's been there about 40 years, actually.
I have a
Any other commissioners? Mr. Thomas?
Yes. Hi. You said the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality licensed you, and they'll do quarterly inspections. Is that correct?
And they can do spot inspections. They actually have us keep track of all the information with each one we do. When we started, when it finished, how long it took, what the weight was, all the
Which is standard with that license to cremate. So since you, to that point of each one you do, right now, do you know like the number of, I guess, services that you do?
I would estimate probably right now it'd be about 200 cremations a year.
Per year?
Per year.
So do you project for this to increase your business as well?
Well, I would imagine it probably would increase some, yeah.
Do you live in this neighborhood?
I live a little further west, but I've grown up in the neighborhood. I'm part of the neighborhood, so.
Do you have any studies that you've presented to this commission regarding the air quality permitting, the emissions, or any kind of water?
Well, all the environmental stuff would be provided. The manufacturer actually provides that data to the environmental Arkansas Quality.
Yeah, the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is aware, will be, when the application is made, they're aware of the location of the facility, the relationship to the adjacent neighborhoods and schools and things like that. So the licensing takes that into consideration in terms of they don't license them in a complete vacuum without looking to see where the facility is.
And there's a school directly across the street from this property?
Henderson's, that's correct. It shows on the drawing right there.
And the previous neighborhood association lady who said that she just received, I guess, notification because she probably was listed as the neighborhood association. Have you met with the neighborhood association?
Yes, I did. In fact, would have been the first of the month. Around then, I met with a few of them to schedule a meeting. Then the following week, they put flyers out, got on the telephone and called people to come to the meeting. We had a large crowd, somewhere between 30 and 40 people. Doris Wright did come at the end and actually asked the crowd that was there how they felt about it, and everybody in the room said they felt fine with it. So, and I was fortunate that some of the group came today. So,
because the previous neighborhood association lady said she was in opposition even for the construction of your business there. Now it seems to be expanding into cremation. So I'm not sure.
I don't remember any objection. We already had the zoning when I started the funeral home, so I don't remember any objections. So.
Okay.
Any other commissioners? Questions, comments?
Chairman, I move for the approval of this item, including all. I move for the approval of this item, including all staff comments and conditions therein.
Do I hear a second? We have a motion to approve this item, number 6, with staff recommendations. Those who approve, raise your hand. Those who do not approve, raise your hand. Okay. Application passes. We will move on to item number 7. Don't forget your umbrellas, please. We'll wait just a second for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These folks are here.
The applicant has stepped out. You want to
AJ, do you want to go get Ron, or do you want to go to the next item, or give him a chance to talk?
If you can hail him to come back in, if he's not coming, we're going to move to item. Okay.
Okay. Item number 7, file number Z-5239-H, Paradise Heights Revised Short Form PCD, located at 300 East Roosevelt Road. The property consists of 2 tracts of land, an 8.99 acre parcel and a 1.43 acre parcel. The larger tract contains the main hospital building, approximately 500,000 square feet, And there's a security building containing 3,488 square feet, a smaller tract with two buildings, 9,870 square feet and 7,600 square feet. Ordinance number 16024, adopted by the Board of Directors on March 19, 1991, rezoned this property from R4 two-family district to PCD, planned commercial development, to allow the use of the old VA Medical Center as a mix of office, mini storage, clinics, records and document storage, cold storage, light manufacturing, and other similar uses. During the public hearing process, it was determined that the applicant would have all I-1 light industrial district enclosed uses, and they were to take access from Roosevelt Road for Tract 1 and use other access points for emergency access only. A revision to the PCD was approved on July 16, 1991. The revision allowed the addition of two more uses. The applicant added a nursing home and a hospital. It was noted that the hospital excluded psychiatric and mental rehabilitation facilities. The current request is to amend the previously approved PCD to allow a mixed-use development to occur on the site. The property is the project is a complete renovation and repurposing of the hospital. The facility will be a mixed-use development of commercial, office, and residential uses. The hours for operation of the office portion of the development are proposed from 8 to 5 daily. The commercial portion, 8 to 9 Sunday through Thursday, and 8 to 11 Friday and Saturday. The original proposal allowed a portion of the site to develop with a restaurant and banquet hall. Based on staff's concerns with the available parking, the applicant has removed the restaurant and banquet hall from the request and indicated should this become a proposed use in the future, they'll seek an amendment to the approved uses and site plan to include placement of a parking structure to accommodate the potential parking demand. Currently, the police department leases space on the second floor and will continue to do so. The applicant is proposing floors 3 through 11 as residential. They've indicated the development with 217 units of residential housing. The potential is there for a portion of the residential to be assisted living, traditional multifamily, and the potential for Airbnb or air bed and breakfast units. The basement contains 4,339 square feet and is proposed for tenant storage. The existing standalone building located on the northwest corner of the site will be a combination caretaker's residence and security command center. There are 360 parking spaces on the site. Parking for multifamily is typically 1.5 spaces per unit. Based on that, 325 spaces would typically be required to serve the multifamily units. All uses of the site must match the parking available on the site. Based on the applicant's revision to the proposed use of the site, staff has now supported the applicant's request. The applicant is seeking approval to allow the redevelopment of the site with a mixed-use development. The applicant has indicated should a restaurant be determined feasible in the future, they will request a revision to the PCD zoning to add the restaurant as an allowable use. Staff now recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends a proposed use mix of the development match the parking available on the site.
Thank you. Applicant, Mr. Wood, would you like to approach the podium? You don't have to make a full presentation. We have one card who had some concerns. If you'd like to hear from him, it's certainly your discretion.
Well, that's where we were doing the break, and where you all were on the other case, rather. Y'all move a lot faster than I'm used to. But I went over some of what we were doing with Mr. Brooks, and if he has some additional questions, though, I'll be glad to.
Okay. Why don't we do that? Mr. Reverend Brooks, would you like to come to the podium and say anything?
I'm Herbert Brooks with St. John Baptist Church, Roosevelt, Maine. We had some concerns, and the concerns were the lack of knowledge. So I'm here just to hear what was proposed, and as we discussed in the hallway, our only opposition would be to alcohol being served and sold, tobacco stores being part of the housing project there. We would also have some concern concerning the rehab, how long a stay that persons will be there, We didn't want it to turn into a rehab where a person will be there long term. And because our neighborhood is far stretching itself now with programs that may not in fact bring neighbors into our neighborhood, and we want to make sure that that does not affect the surrounding in the neighborhood. That was our only concern. Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Brooks. Mr. Wood?
Yes. And now, as far as the rehab, I think we just proposed doing an assisted living center. So it would be basically, and I don't know whether we actually, that might be a little semantics, but it's not a nursing facility. And it would be a third party that would operate something like that. So that was just kind of making the application, we're using that to make the application more flexible. If we don't, the owners or the developers are not in that line of business, so if a third party is not interested, then we won't be doing it. But it's not a rehab facility. That's still along the lines of use of an apartment. However, they would have assistance available to them.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Questions, observations? No?
Pardon me. I know I'm a little out of order. I didn't know the procedure, but I have a question. I live on Rod Street.
Could you, excuse me, could you go ahead and come to the podium?
I'm sorry. I would have filled out a card had I known. But my name is Cedric Cooper, and I live at 2300 Rock. And my only concern, I grew up in that neighborhood, and I moved back, but they don't use that rear entrance. And that would be my only concern, is if there's going to start being traffic coming through there using that rear entrance. The way it is now, it doesn't affect me, and I really appreciate it not.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Wood, could you clarify that for us?
No, we plan on creating or opening that gate up off of Roosevelt. The Roosevelt entrance would be the main entrance to the facility.
Access.
And we actually, our intent is making that like a little boulevard to the facility. The entrance off of Rock Street, yeah. Yeah, right. That's a back entrance, and it's mainly used by the police department. But it wouldn't be a main entrance for the residents of this facility. As you notice, all the parking is in the front of the building off of Roosevelt.
Commissioner Stebbins. Okay. So that entrance, is it used by the police? Anyone know? Okay. So the police has control over that particular access. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Yes, I had a question on the staff write-up. It says on the 10th and 11th floors, it would have Airbnb rentals or apartment units. I'm just not familiar with a residential building having Airbnb. I mean, would someone rent the apartment and then they would lease them out to Airbnb, or?
It could be done that way, or it could be done that the developer would offer those as units for the travelers.
Okay, I've never seen that before in an application, so I was just curious.
These are new times.
I hear you.
Yes. Room with a view.
With the best view.
Any other commissioners before I hear a motion? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of this item, including all staff comments and conditions therein.
Do we hear?
Second.
Second. I heard motion second to approve this application as written with staff recommendations. Those approve, raise your right hand. Those who do not, application passes unanimously. Okay. We will now move on to item number 8.
United Methodist Foundation of Arkansas Revised Short Form PDO, file number Z-6249A, located at 5300 Evergreen Drive. Ordinance number 17462, adopted by the Board of Directors on April 15, 1997, rezoned the site from R2 single family to PDO to allow the development of the site with a 2,599 square foot one-story office building. The sole tenant was proposed as the United Methodist Foundation of Arkansas. The current request is to amend the previously approved PDO to add general and professional office uses, allowable uses for the property. The property was zoned PDO in 97 to allow the Methodist Church, United Methodist Church of Arkansas, to construct the new office building on the site, and the approval limited to them. The amendment would allow the addition of the general and professional uses as defined by the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance defines general and professional office as a place for regular transaction of business, but not to include the occupation by retail sales, transfer of manufactured goods, or storage of commodities. The approval would allow uses such as accountants, attorneys, engineers, other professional, charitable organizations, and similar low-impact office users. The applicant notes, as with the current user, the future users would generate very little traffic and create no burdensome parking problems. There are no building modifications proposed. The applicant has indicated that they will resurface the existing sign. Based on an amendment received today, the applicant is no longer requesting a sign on the east wall facing Evergreen. There is currently no dumpster located on the site, and the applicant is not proposing to place a dumpster on the site. The site currently uses roll-out garbage cans, and similar in size to the average residential home. The new tenant will continue to use this as a method of trash collection. The days and hours of operation, I think I've got this wrong. I think it's 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and from 8 to 2 on Saturday, but Mr. Schallhorn can clarify that for us. These are similar hours as the previous tenant, the United Methodist Foundation. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request to amend the previously approved PDO to allow general and professional office uses as allowable uses for the site. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in the agenda staff report.
Okay. Would the applicant like to approach the lectern?
Good afternoon, Chairman Berry and Commissioners. My name is Scott Schallhorn. I'm an attorney with Mitchell Williams, and we represent the United Methodist Foundation of Arkansas. The property, as Ms. James mentioned, is at 5300 Evergreen Drive. I'll make some brief remarks, and then we'll reserve some time to address any comments that come from opponents to the matter. The property is, as you can see, on the northwest corner of the intersection of Evergreen and Harrison. It's just a block west of Kavanaugh Boulevard. You see that it's just right across the street from the Prospect Terrace Apartments, which is a 19-unit apartment development. A little over a block away is the Mount St. Mary Academy, a Lutheran church, and then some shops and a restaurant. With its 7 employees, the foundation has outgrown the building that they've occupied for the past 20 years. The foundation looks to sell the property, but as Ms. James noticed, that the use is limited solely to that by the United Methodist Foundation. So we're asking to amend this PDO solely to permit use in a manner that's been used for the past 20 years. We've been very intentional and careful in making this application to make it a non-event. And we'd be the most pleased if the foundation moved out and a new occupant moved in and no one knows the difference. That's what we're shooting for. Just over a week ago, Mr. Jim Argue, the executive director of the foundation, and I appeared before the Hillcrest Residents Association board, presented the plan as we submitted it. The Residents Association voted to not oppose the application, which is the most favorable action that this group gives on these type matters. We learned over the last couple of days of some opposition by Ms. Molly Satterfield, who owns the Prospect Terrace Apartments, and perhaps some other neighbors. I spoke with Mr. Brad Walker, her attorney, on Tuesday, and received an email from him later that day listing 3 concerns. I took those back to Mr. Argue. We talked about them, responded to Mr. Walker on Wednesday morning that the foundation would agree to 2 of those 3 changes. Mr. Walker consulted his client and responded later yesterday afternoon with a list of 5 objections. So this morning, after talking with Mr. Argue, we submitted a letter to Ms. James advising that we agree to modify the plan to satisfy 4 of those 5 objections. Specifically, we did agree to remove the sign. If I'm point of difference, we agreed to remove the east-facing sign facing Harrison. The existing sign faces south and Evergreen. So we'll reface the Evergreen sign. There will not be a sign facing east toward the apartments, which is what is objectionable to the Prospect Terrace folks. And then we also agreed to limit the use to a specific list of users. And they're the professional users, attorneys, accountants, bookkeepers, investment financial advisors, insurance brokers, architects, engineers, those sorts of professional matters. So the use will be essentially identical to what's there now. So we went from 3 objections, we agreed to 2. We came to 5 objections, we've now agreed to 4. The one objection that we can't agree to is the demand that the occupancy for the building be limited to the number of parking spaces outside the property that's on the property. What's interesting about this demand is that there's no such limit that's currently on the property. The foundation's been very deliberate and careful in trying to match up the use of that any future user could make. The professional office use is the same. The signage is the same. The lighting is the same. The parking lot, the single access from Harrison Street, privacy screening is the same. Yet we're being asked to do something that we've never had to do before. If it were physically possible, the United Methodist Foundation could pack 15 employees in there and not violate any existing regulation or requirement. The ultimate limit to the capacity of this building is its size. And that size cannot be changed without coming back to you. The foundation with its 7 employees is now out of space and they've got to move. The foundation has made significant concessions to address all but one of the concerns of the neighbors, and the limited size of the building itself satisfies that demand. We want to keep the building the same and the use the same, just allow somebody else to use it. The foundation's application is modified, accomplishes that, and we ask that it be approved. I'm certainly pleased to address any questions, and I'll reserve the balance of our time for responses.
Thank you. We have one card here, Brad Walker.
Mr. Berry, Commissioners. I am Brad Walker, and in 1995, when I served on the Planning Commission, this matter came before the Planning Commission. This is a graceful afternoon. Everyone seems to have gotten along this afternoon, and I will tell you that Mr. Argue and Mr. Shallhorn have done their best to accommodate my neighbor and property owner and family in their interest in the neighborhood. But if I could have the PowerPoint, please. We have to start with this property and the promises that were made. Go to page 2. This is really a historic piece of property because when this application came in, Stephen Giles did some legal research from the attorney's office upstairs and made the decision that with very restrictive PRDs, PODs, whatever, I don't have the acronym, it keeps moving around along me, but if you're going to do a contract type zoning, then a plan amendment is not necessary. This was the case. This was the case when we broke making plan amendments. We said, if you do something in a neighborhood that really is such that it leaves everything alone, that it won't disrupt the continuity, you don't have to make a plan amendment. So when this application was submitted, that issue was raised. If you could go to the next page. Because what we really have, our zoning is the purple, but your land use plan is the yellow. So what Mr. Giles was saying to the commission is that if you agree, because there have been two applications in 84 and 95, there have been applications for a duplex and an apartment, and they were turned down. So then the application came in, the Methodists came in and said, we need an office in the neighborhood, very quiet office. And they submitted an application. We'll go to the next frame. And part of the requirement, the essential element was, let's go one more. The staff recommended approval if the rezoning of the site, as it says in the last sentence, if the United Methodist Foundation of Arkansas vacates the structure, it will revert to R2 single family use. That was the promise made in 1997. That if we have to go somewhere, it'll go back. It'll go back to that yellow. It'll go back to our land use plan. Now, the neighbors aren't saying it needs to go back. We're saying, yes, we'll let you continue like the foundation. So what is the foundation? Can we go one more page? The foundation described in its application in very detail what would be in there, what they would be doing, and how they would be acting. One more page. Let's go one more. I'm out of sequence. Yeah. Okay. Let's go one more. Somehow PowerPoint. There we go. In that letter, the foundation wrote in the application, the foundation currently employs 2 full-time and 2 part-time employees, and additionally provides office space for 1 volunteer board member. And in their application in the design of the building, they have provided 1 additional office for a future employee if needed. So when you add those up, come up with 6 employees. Mr. Shalhorn confirmed to us today that there are 7 employees. And there are 8 parking spaces. Gee, what's the burden on the neighborhood? They park within the site. We heard it twice today. We want to limit the application to the parking within the site. If this is going to continue to be a non-conforming use with a contract that maintains the tone that it promised to the city in 97, it needs to park within the site. So our suggestion to you is we don't have to go back to R2. We don't have to start from scratch. But we do need to come up with those adjectives that we can describe the experience of the last 20 years. And the experience has been a business that really doesn't have a high customer base. And so we agreed on the identification of who those people are. I mean, people don't like to come see me. I'm a lawyer. You know, you don't want to go see your lawyer. So lawyers work a lot without a client coming. So that's okay. Accountants do the same thing. They email your forms. You maybe meet with your accountant once a year, financial advisor once a year. So there are not a lot of clients coming. But employees are there. They're in the office. They do their work. And there's no parking adjacent on the street on Evergreen because there's no parking allowed on Evergreen. And with the apron and the access to Harrison, there's no street parking available in front of the store, of the facility. So we agree with the foundation that if they can propose a tenant or a purchaser that's like the foundation, we welcome another 20 years relationship. But they're not able to agree to that. They're unwilling to set a limitation. Now, they may have a current contract to sell this facility, but that's one of many people that could look at this wonderful little building as a choice opportunity to nestle into a residential neighborhood with a quiet business. They just haven't found the right one that has 7 employees. We're saying 8's fine with us. We need a limit. We need a number. And if they're not willing to give a number, then let's do some math. Would you do another one? This is Google, so it may be totally wrong, okay? But when you research things, you go pull things up. The CoreNet Global is supposed to be an authority. Lord help me, this is the best information I could get. Our ordinance says 400 square feet needs a parking space with an office. But we all know that what the city requires as a minimum may not be what the world demands. And I know Troy knows that some people, they want twice the parking. If you go to a Walmart, there's 3 times the parking we decide that we need in retail because they know what they need. North American offices average 150 square feet per worker last year. If we go to 200 per worker, we're talking about the ability to have 12 to 14 people in there. If we take the boardroom and we put Carol's, let's just assume we have a charitable organization that's on the phone bank. Now, I don't know about your cell phone, but I get calls from numbers I don't know, and somebody's getting paid to call me and ask me to donate to something. You know, and I have the great line, I don't donate to compensated solicitations, but that's just a trick to get off the phone. But we could have a substantial number of employees within these 3,000 square feet. So that wouldn't be the foundation. That would be somebody different. At 7 people, they're leaving because they need more room. Let's just put a cap. Let's let it be the foundation. Now, I can't write their PDO. I can't write it. Our physicians can't write it for them. They have chosen not to put a number there. So I encourage you, we're not asking you to vote no. We're not asking the Methodist Foundation to be hung out to dry on a building. We're just asking them to define a limitation that the staff can enforce that will assure us the next 20 years is like the promise they made for the prior 20 years. And we do, Molly is here with her family, and then we have a resident from up the street, then she is here, and they're welcome to answer any questions if you have particular questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Appreciate it. Applicant?
In 1997 was a long time ago. Bill Clinton was still president. And that's not intended to be a political statement, that's just a fact. And the Razorbacks football team played 3 games that year in War Memorial Stadium. It's a long time ago. Times change. People and circumstances change. The United Methodist Foundation has occupied that building for 20 years and has maxed it out at seven people. Like I say, there is currently no provision that stops them from dropping 15 people in there, and there hasn't been since the front end. So they're asking for something they don't presently have. We've accommodated in every sense. We've done our best to be reasonable and to try to come up with some formula that says you can't put more than X because of Y, and refer, I know with respect to Mr. Walker, I go to Google all the time too, but I certainly don't take everything I find on the internet as gospel. And I do know from development work that oftentimes those parking ratios are materially inflated just because they may at one point in a year require some extra folks. There is a, to the extent, and even, well, interestingly, I will say, because the apartments, the 19-unit apartment complex has, there's no street parking. Well, that's not true either. Parking is odd through there because there's straight-in parking straight from the street, which I don't believe is appropriate, but that runs along there, and the use of the foundation and as the way we've made our application, the use of any future property would be during the daytime, when most of the people who live around there are at work. So even if someone has to park going up Harrison Street, and there's plenty of parking going north on the street, up Harrison Street, no one would be impacted. There's no issue there. So, permitting, this is not one of those situations where we need to impose additional restrictions that don't already exist when the issue's never been a problem. They share parking now, essentially. Nighttime, the occupants of the hotel, the apartments use the foundation's parking lot with their guests. So it's become something of a benefit to the apartment users. There's no harm in changing this use. There's no reason to overlay a limit on the occupancy of the building because it's self-limiting. And I can certainly address any of the questions.
You had a chance to submit a card. I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, Mr. Walker, you know the procedure here.
All I would say is, just want to comment. I meant to review the procedure. The Planning Commission turned the application down. The application was turned down, and the City Board overruled the Planning Commission and granted.
That's correct. I was there.
Ruth Bell, on both occasions, opposed the application. So I'm glad she's here today.
Applicant, did you want to respond to that?
Well, yes, but I wasn't around in 1997 on this particular matter. Trust me, I was around. But certainly the procedure was followed. I don't know why the Planning Commission did what they did. I do know proper procedure was followed by the United Methodist Foundation, and the board determined that it was an appropriate use and consented to the zoning. A lot of history, I understand. The ultimate result was the United Methodist Foundation plan was approved, again, with no occupancy limitations.
Thank you. I was there in 1997, so I can speak to the history. But right now, I want to hear other commissioners. Okay, look, come on up. Please approach the lectern and state your name and what you'd like to say.
Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion. My name is Jake Lindberg. I live down the street and I work across the street from this facility. And I am totally opposed to it. I think it should be converted back to residential. Historically, Hillcrest is eroding and it will continue to erode. Businesses should be on Kavanaugh and Markham. The overlay stops 3 houses from Markham. That's where businesses should be. It encroaches into the neighborhood, it erodes the fabric, it increases traffic on Evergreen. Harrison is no parking. So I don't think this increases property value. I think it's bad for the neighborhood. Now, the lawyers for the other side said it's great for the neighborhood. It's a terrific thing to do. I think they should hold up their promise and convert it back to residential. The lawyer is not an urban planner. He's not an architect. He's not a landscape architect. I am. It's bad for the neighborhood. Thanks.
Other commissioners? Comments?
I grew up in that neighborhood, and I hate to tell you how many years ago that was. But Mr. Walker, you won't believe the parking problems we've heard since '97. This one is nothing. We have had growth there, the Heights that had growth. People are renting backyards to park in. This building is 2,600 square feet, I think it is. It's limited by its size. And I think the type of business and the expense of that, I just don't see the problem here. And like I said, I've seen so many other things that we've allowed that really bothered me. This doesn't bother me.
Thank you, Commissioner May. Other commissioners, I do want to exercise prerogative to say something, Commissioner Tour, before you make a motion, if that's okay. What I'd like to ask staff, on general quiet office, is exceptional or is it prevalent that you attach limits on the number of occupancy for small quiet office space, historically?
Chairman, we do not recall that it has ever been done. Typically, when we set this, there's a parking space requirement per square footage of use. And Mr. Carney can speak to this district has a reduced parking space, 50% reduced for that. And so that's what we calculate this stuff based on. And there was a point brought up, and I'm glad that they did, about parking for certain office spaces and general parking throughout the nation, and that is correct, there is, but that is also done by building size and type. And so you get a lot larger building depending on the structures and the stuff and the layout of the internal building. You know, sometimes when you can come through and gut an entire building, you can change the whole characteristic of a floor layout and you can redo it. But some of those buildings that they build, you just can't necessarily gut an entire floor to redo the layout. And so this one, we do, that's why it's done by the square footage. And in general, it falls in line with what we have on a national basis, but that reduction is what we're talking about. And we done the calculation, and it falls in line with our codes on that reduction.
Thank you. I would like to say that I was here in 1997, and the reason it didn't pass in part was I was a stinker who asked Mr. Argy to put the parking in back. And I lost on that issue, but actually the neighborhood really wanted the parking in back, so it would not impact the neighborhood, and it would all the traffic would come into the street. I would ask Mr. Walker, rhetorically maybe, your client in the Prospect Terrace apartment building, is there a limit? If when she bought the building, was there a limit on the number of people she had in her apartment building? And will she place a limit on hers if she were to sell?
Her building is on the National Historic Register. It does have, when she acquired it, it had dirt parking on the north side. She has completed that and paved the alley portion to provide more than code required parking for her facility. It is an excess parking. You know, we contemplated the idea of making available spaces in the day. You know, we have off-site, lots of facilities make arrangements for nearby parking within 300 feet that you count in a parking calculation. You know, what we have asked is that the Methodist Foundation continue what has been the experience. And the current applicant proposes to have 10 employees. And if his daughter comes back to work as a lawyer in the firm, there may be more. So we're not speculating that there's going to be more than 6, more than 7. That's what's anticipated. And so our hope would be that we could identify a manageable number so that it wouldn't burden the neighborhood.
You answered my question. The standard you're trying to impose on the applicant is not a standard that's imposed on the apartment building. Well, let me finish.
Yeah.
The number of employees that the applicant of the current owner supplied was my understanding, since I was there, was strictly informational. This is the number of employees we're going to have. It was not part of the condition of the zoning. And so you're bringing an informational item and saying that was a condition. That's not true, to my understanding.
Well, let's reflect on that, because we're not dealing with a zoning classification. We're dealing with a POD, a PR, whatever it is. PDO, which means it's a specifically identified use with all criteria listed. There is no.
What criteria has to do with employees that was conditioned on this property previously?
That it would go back to R2 if they left.
Well, that's why he's applying for a PDO. So.
Okay, so if we're talking about meeting those obligations, that's where it is. And if we want to turn it yellow and start with a new application with the new
I'm not going to argue that was not part of the criteria of the original zoning. But I think that's all. That's enough. Yes, Mr. Stebbins?
Mr. Walker, you referenced the land use plan. I mean, I didn't think that it reverted back to it didn't matter. I mean, it's the way it's zoned that's important, right? It doesn't have to revert back to the land use plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it's just, okay. I was just confused about the reference to the land use plan.
The applicant specifically consented to, if it vacated the property, part of their contract with this PDO was that it would revert to R2.
But that's the zoning and not the land use plan.
The land use plan never changed. This is the first time we abandoned conformity to the land use plan. It's always been R2 and it stays R2.
Okay. I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the approval of this item, including all staff conditions and comments therein.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Those approve of this application as written with staff recommendation as amended by the applicant, raise your hand. Those who do not approve, application passes unanimously. I don't believe there's any other items on our regular agenda. We are open for citizens communication, though, for those who would like to say anything before we adjourn into the great wetness outdoors. Everyone be sure to bring your umbrella. We stand adjourned.